Hi there! In this tutorial, we're going to learn how to use the Tinkercad software in order to make a character design from its rough draft to its detailed version. A couple of the core concepts we're going to explore here are duplicating existing objects to create new pieces rather than creating them from scratch. Another thing is using the work plane tool, scaling, and rotating objects precisely. Campers will also learn how to group objects and see the process of the rough draft to the detail. So, for my example, I'm going to be using the Cyberman character from Doctor Who, because I'm a total nerd, and I think this is a good idea. So, to start off, I want to think about what are some of the basic shapes of my character. To start off this tutorial, there is a couple of key concepts that you want to reiterate to your campers whenever you show this to them. One of which is this is a rough draft, so we want to think about what are the basic shapes of our character and get them oriented right before getting into the tiny nitty-gritty details. So try and picture this character as a bunch of boxes oriented together to make this shape. Now, in your tutorial, we strongly suggest going back and forth between the reference image and Tinkercad to get that good idea. So first things first is I'm going to go ahead and start with the head of my character. In Tinkercad, we're going to go to the geometric panel and left click and drag in order to get a box for the head. With that, we're going to go ahead and drag it up a little bit. Now, campers may be tempted to start building the body by adding in another box, but this may get inaccurate results that might require much more finesse in order to get a good looking model. To make this easy, what we're going to do is click on our head and go to Edit, Duplicate. That way we can drag down this in order to get a body that is perfectly aligned with our head. Now, I want to go ahead and get a bobblehead look for my character. Campers may be tempted to scale in one direction using the keys like this. This can take also a little bit of time. We suggest having campers hold down the Alt key and left clicking to scale in both directions at once. Again, I'm going to hold down the Alt key to bring up this head scale. Now I'm starting to get a little bit of that head shape that I like. Now, I want to go ahead and start working on the arms. This is a great opportunity to reiterate using the work plane tool in order to get very precise movements. As a reminder, the work plane tool is located in the helper panel and allows you to change the orientation of your model and at where you put objects. It's also helpful to teach campers to hit the W key on their keyboard to activate their work plane. So, since the arms of my character are going to be on this shape over here, I'm going to use my work plane tool and click here. Now I'm going to go ahead and drag over a box and start to move and scale it in how I want it to look. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller and move it closer. The next thing I'll do is scale my arm to make it a little bit more skinnier like that. Now, as you can see, my arm's not exactly connected to the body properly. Now, as you can see, I can only move my arm in this direction, but if I wanted to move it like this, it'll stay attached to this work plane. So I'm going to go ahead and orient it a little bit close to the middle of the arm, and then bring it forward so it touches the body. I'm also gonna make it a little bit longer to make a more interesting character design. Now, I want to add a little bit more detail. Now, going back to my reference image, I can see that the Cybermen have a very cool piece of armor that sticks out from their arm. So while mine is smooth and normal, theirs is a little bit pokey. So I'm gonna go ahead and duplicate this and start adding a little bit more to my design. I'm wanting to add a little bit more interest, and so what I'm going to do is rotate this by holding down here and changing it to 45 degrees. Now, I would like to bring this up a little bit, so I'm going to press the W key, change my work plane, and pop this up a little bit, and pop this arm down a little bit. So I get a cool looking design here. Now, instead of copying this all by hand, what I can do is group these arms together into one piece and duplicate this. This makes it much more easier for your characters to get more complex and saves a lot of work. To group objects together, left click on the very first one, and while holding down the Shift key, left click on other objects. You can also left click and drag a lasso around two objects that you want to group together. Once you have the objects that you want highlighted, as you can see here, you can go ahead and press the group button. Now these two objects are one piece. Now that we have our arm grouped, we can go to Edit, Duplicate, and left click. Now we have two arms. Cool. At this point, we might want to go ahead and change the work plane we're going to work in. As opposed to moving up and down, we want to move left and right on our body. So let's go ahead and click on one of the left or right parts of our body to switch the work plane. Now that we've switched our work plane, I can click the new arm and move it into place. Now, campers might want to go ahead and rotate this manually like this, but it's oftentimes quite easy to mirror an object in order to get it looking how we want it. Mirroring the object allows us to flip it. This is oftentimes really useful anytime we do something on a part that's symmetrical, such as the arms or legs. Now, in order to mirror, let's go ahead and make sure our object is selected, go to Adjust, and click Mirror. Once you have Mirror selected, you'll see a couple of arrows show up on your screen. If you hover over any of these arrows, it gives you a preview of what your object's going to look like. Since I want to mirror this like an arm, I'm going to hover over this arrow, decide that this is exactly what I want, and left click to confirm. Now I have mirrored it, and I can press Escape on my keyboard or anywhere else on my screen to exit out of that. And it's not perfectly aligned, so I'm going to go ahead and bring it in just a little bit more so it touches the body. It's important to describe how to build objects in this way to your campers, since it'll give them a larger amount of control over the software. The greater their control over the software, the more complex their objects and more interesting they'll become. To recap, it's more helpful to duplicate objects rather than to drag them in. Grouping and mirroring objects is also another quick way of getting designs out, and using the work plane tool should be frequently demonstrated so campers can get precise and exact movements for many of their objects. Now, the rest of this video will show the character being fleshed out from a rough draft to detail.